So in this one, we're going to change from inputs and we're going to start to look at outputs. And specifically, we're going to be looking at different monitors, different types of displays, have a look at some advantages and disadvantages and how they work. So first of all, a monitor is basically just a screen that is attached to a computer that shows you what is going on or what you're doing inside the computer. Now you might sometimes hear it referred to as a VDU, which stands for Visual Display Unit. Now basically you're going to be using it to look at everything that's going on, whether it be text, images, video. You're going to be using that. Right. Don't excuse me, don't confuse it with sound. I know your video does come with sound, but you don't use a monitor to see sound because you can't see sound. You hear sound. Now, even if you can hear sound coming out of the box that your monitor is in, it's still using a speaker. Okay, so when you're watching a video, you're using a speaker and a monitor or a screen as an output device. They're two different things. So the main advantage of a monitor is that you basically everything you do, you will see its effects immediately. Alright, so when you click something and something loads up, you see that thing loading up immediately. The disadvantage is the fact that it's unable to save anything because it's just a monitor, it just displays something out. So you can't make a hard copy of it. If you wanted to save it, you would have to save it onto a computer, onto a hard disk, and if you wanted a copy of it to use, you would have to print it out using a printer. Alright. So we'll just have a quick look at some older types of monitors and then we'll look at more modern. So you have the CRT, which is a cathode ray tube, and that's the big box type telly. Some of you might not have even seen one in real life, but they were big boxy type things and they weren't flat and they used tubes to display the screen. We don't use them anymore, they're all technology. Another one that you might have seen is plasma, and we still see them around. They're not massively uncommon and they do give a really bright image, but they also use a lot of electricity. Okay, so then they cost more money to run and they're not as good for the environment. So we tend not to use them as much anymore. We tend to use these two types here. An LCD, which is liquid crystal display. This is the least expensive of the two that we're looking at, and it does have a flat screen. And we have LED, which is more expensive, but it does have a brighter picture and a more precise, crisp, sharper picture. So let's have a look. So LCD screen. So the LCD inside, when you see an LCD screen, it stands for liquid crystal display. All right, now if you look at my diagram here, that is this pink thing here. All right, now this material, the liquid crystal material, it basically, when you put different amounts of electricity through it, it alters. All right, so if you can change, the different amounts of electricity going through at any given time and any given position, it means that you can display or alter the amount of color that's being let through. Okay, so it works by having a backlight here. Okay, and then it has two electrodes at either side of the liquid crystal, and the light shines through, so the light will be emitted at the back here from the backlight, and the electrodes alter the amount of electricity that's going through the liquid crystal, and that will then change how the picture is perceived when it's viewed by a person. Okay, now important things to remember here is that the liquid crystal, this bit here, does not emit light. Okay, it works with a backlight back here. The light source is coming from here and it's passing through the liquid crystal. Okay, and the electrodes are changing how the liquid crystal is, which means that the different amount of lights will go through, which allows different colors to be filtered through, and then you can see here. All right, so before we move on to the next type of screen, we'll have a quick look at projectors. So you have an LCD projector, okay, where it works exactly the same way. A beam of light passes through the liquid crystal and then it's projected onto the screen. Alright, now remember, a projector is tended to be used for large groups of people because it can project onto big flat surfaces. The closer you are, the smaller it will be. So if you could move far back, you could project onto a big surface, and then groups of people could see it. Alright, and then the second type of projector that is quite common is a digital light projector, or a DLP. Now this works with mirrors, okay, and excuse me, basically light bounces off thousands and thousands of little tiny mirrors inside of the projector, and then it projects out onto the screen. Alright, now the DLP projector is what you would normally find in a cinema, which is why you call digital cinema. Alright, okay, let's have a look at the next type of screen then. So the next type of screen, like we said, is the LEDs. Now LEDs stands for light emitting diode. Now I've got a kind of an example of a DG with lots of LEDs behind them here, and you can see that there are separate bulbs for each part of the light. Now in this specific example here, they're all the same color, but we could have them to be different colors. And if we had them to be able to represent a range of different colors, a big enough range of different colors, we could, and they were close enough together, and we had enough of them, we could start to show pictures. And the more of the LEDs we had, the more crisp and clear the picture would be. And the more colors that you can represent, the more realistic the picture is going to be. All right, so that is an LED. So you can see the difference there, yeah, with LEDs having lots of tiny little bulbs to represent the image, whereas the LCD uses a backlight and it passes through the liquid crystal, which is just basically one light being emitted, and then the liquid crystal filtering out different types of light using the electronic diodes and the color filter. Now you can get LED, like box standard LED TVs that just say LED. They're not really typical, like strictly LED in the way you might think, because the way these work is they have a backlight, but they use the backlight as separate LED bulbs that just are one color, and then they have the liquid crystal in between them with the electronic diodes and the color filter, just like in the LCD screen, and then they emit separate pieces of light, which does give you a better picture than the LCD. But strictly speaking, it's not what you necessarily think of when you think about an LED screen, because when people think LED, they think it is actually different colored bulbs, and an LED screen is not that. Okay, to get the individual colored bulbs where when you're looking at a picture, it's a different colored bulb, that makes it, you need to get an organic LED screen. That is the OLED, which are a bit more expensive. When you go to places like Elko or a shop that has Euronics or somewhere like that sells TVs, the OLED TVs are always a bit more expensive than the LEDs, and this is why. Okay, so you can see the advantages of the OLED is that it gives you the best picture and the sharpest quality, but the disadvantages is going to cost more money. Okay, and that is different types of screens. I'll see you in the next video where we look at sound.